latest. If you'd like to sign up for the county's free debris removal, fill out a right of entry form, or get a list of disaster recovery centers that are still active, please visit recovery.lacounty.gov or call the debris hotline at 844-347-3332. If you're vulnerable to mudslides with rain in the forecast, free sandbags are being offered. Go to lacounty.pw/sandbags to find out where to get them. Businesses who have lost their facilities due to the fires can use a regional online source to get free or discounted locations. Whether you're interested in donating or finding space, you can visit the Business-to-Business Space Share portal at spaceshare.lacounty.gov. Additional LA County small business support and programs can be found at opportunity.lacounty.gov. Praying, advocating, and standing with you. KBLA Talk 1580.
Well, all right. Yeah. You know, ever since I turned pro in 1989, when I signed the dotted line, it was strange. Most things changed for the better and for the worse. So I called my mama and she said, baby,
must be the money.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. Glad to have you with us in this hour. It must be the money, and that's what we are talking about in this hour. It's a conversation with historian Calvin Schermerhorn about his new book, The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. Wealth is, of course, central to the American pursuit of happiness, and it is, to my mind, at least an overriding measure of well-being. Yet wealth is conspicuously absent from African-American households. Consider that 3.5 million Black American families have zero or negative wealth. I am delighted to welcome the noted historian Calvin Schermerhorn back to this program to discuss the new text, The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. Professor Schermerhorn, how are you, sir?
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me back.
It's good to have you back, and congratulations on the book. This is... as all your work is well researched, carefully researched, and what I love, and we'll get to this later in this conversation, are the variety of innovative solutions that you offer us to finally and perhaps forever shrink this wealth gap. But I want to start at the beginning, as they say. I am curious, for starters, what interested you in the subject matter?
Well, I grew up in an Air Force family, and in 1984 we moved from an air base in Germany to southern Maryland, and it was the first time I encountered this because on an air base in Germany, everyone was wearing uniforms. We all lived in government housing and all that, and the inequalities were hard to see. But when I went to elementary school in southern Maryland, I started to see it. I started to wonder, why did William's father pick up a mop and a bucket when he went to work, and why did my dad pick up a briefcase? And it wasn't because there weren't African-American, teachers and principals. We had both in my school. It was just that there seemed to be this secret hiding in the landscape of southern Maryland that nobody wanted to talk about. And so in my professional career, I researched enslavement and these big questions of American history. But I always ran into this thing where after 1865, freedom came. There was this opportunity. But what happened later? What were the afterlives of enslavement? And so this book goes back to the beginning, to 1619, and tells the story of wealth inequality over 400 years through several families who strove to make a better life for their children.
Mm-hmm. Tell me the ways in which going back to 1619 are both instructive and informative.
Well, if we want to see the roots of today's racial wealth gap, and I think wealth is the leading indicator of black-white inequality in the United States today. For the typical American family, every typical white family has $1. The typical African-American family has 16 cents. That's an apples-to-apples comparison. And And the thing is that wealth, as we know, isn't just a matter of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and making a living. It's an intergenerational project. So I thought, well, let's go back to the beginning and see what opportunities there were for some of the first African arrivals in what would become the United States to move up. And so I traced the history of Mary and Anthony Johnson, who arrived very early in that colonial landscape. And they were somewhere between indentured and enslaved, and their captors treated them as enslaved people. But they had an opportunity. They may have caught wolves and cashed in on the bounties. They bought livestock. They eventually ranched a herd, bought their way out of enslavement, had children, and moved across the Chesapeake Bay to the Virginia Eastern Shore, where as they advanced in their careers, they traded livestock for bound laborers, which got them land, and they became tobacco planters by the 1650s. So here were a family, the Johnsons, of black planters who sued their white neighbors in court and won, and were well respected by the colony, at least in that moment of time in the 1650s. But by 1670, when Anthony Johnson passed away, he passed away without a will, the county court met, and they decided that, in quotes, Anthony Johnson was a Negro and by consequence an alien, and for that cause his land doth escheat, or he can't pass this land on to an heir. So by the 1670s, again, 100 years before the Revolution, the colonies are already constraining black wealth. And so what is the story? What is why was that? And what opportunities did African Americans have after that?
Yeah, we'll talk about what that constraining was all about when we come forward. I am curious at the onset of this conversation to learn more about these opportunities. It's one thing for them to put a lid on black wealth, or it's another thing, though, to get an understanding of what those opportunities were. When we come forward, we'll talk about the opportunities, and we will jump from there. The new book is called The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. Our guest is Calvin Schermerhorn right now on Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
What you want to do, huh? KBLA Talk 1580 is thrilled to share that we have been named as a semi-finalist for the coveted American Climate Leadership Awards, honoring our climate work last year. We're also delighted to announce year 2 of our Climate Justice Crusade. This year's $2 million 12-month campaign will link and combat the relationship between climate change and poor health outcomes for African Americans and the poor. Climate inequities have taken a toll with multiple health triggers in the black community, such as extreme heat and poor air quality, made worse by the recent wildfires. Our work to ensure climate justice and climate equity continues. In the coming weeks and months, you'll be hearing a lot more about our 2025 climate campaign. To learn more about our plans for this year and the companies and organizations supporting us, log on to our website at KBLA1580.com. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
It's KBLA Talk 1580's third annual Black History Month luncheon, and you're invited. This is year 2 of our climate justice work, and this year's $2 million 12-month campaign is all about linking and combating the relationship between climate and Black health. We already know that these wildfires will leave in their wake even greater inequities, including negative impacts on Black health, given the toxic air pollutants circulating in the air we breathe. So, as part of this year's climate campaign, we're honoring Black doctors and leaders in healthcare at our annual Black History Month luncheon, Friday, February 28th at noon. If you would like to join us, just go to our KBLA 1580 website and register for your chance to be our guest at the luncheon. We'd love to see you. And in case you haven't heard the news, KBLA Talk 1580 was just named one of the semifinalists for the American Climate Leadership Awards 2025. Caring about the climate, caring about the community, changing the conversation. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down. Less monologue, more dialogue. Tavis Smiley continues right now.
It does indeed with Calvin Schermerhorn, who's the author of the new book, The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. We have conversations all the time around here about the wealth gap in this country, the racial wealth gap, but we don't always get to the bottom of how this racial wealth gap was made in the first place. And so I am grateful for this book, The Plunder of Black America, and grateful for this conversation with its author, Calvin Schermerhorn. Calvin, let me ask you early on what some of the opportunities were for Black folk to create wealth. In modern times, we think of home ownership as the path toward wealth. But back in the day, the resistance notwithstanding, what were some of the opportunities for Black folk to start to create wealth?
Well, thank you for asking. One of the early chapters looks at Venture and Meg Smith, who were enslaved in New England. And we usually think, oh, there wasn't any slavery in New England, but actually was. The region was saturated with it. So Venture's owners held out the promise of freedom should he be able to earn extra money on the side, enough to purchase himself and eventually his family out of enslavement. And so he worked on Fisher's Island, which was the westernmost part of colonial New York, trapping fur animals, fishing, gardening. As he progressed, he cut wood by the cord. He bought land, even though he was enslaved. He farmed it. He was a small business person. He hauled lumber. He wore a number of hats. I mean, if he had a business card, it would be full of descriptors. But the pernicious thing was that his enslavers used that earning potential to make him into a cash machine. And by the time he became free in the 1770s, he had been captured in West Africa. He survived the Middle Passage. He'd grown up, married, had children. But by the time he was free in the 1770s, he had earned the equivalent of 16 years of average income. And by that time, the enslavers had stolen about 50 years worth of income in the kind of what they charged him for his freedom and for his family's freedom.
Yeah. See that. I'm sorry. Let me jump in real quick. That's the frame that I want to interrogate, because if you start with, as Maya Angelou wrote in her brilliant poem on the Pulse of Morning, that we were bought, stolen, sold into slavery, arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream. That's Maya Angelou, since we're in Black History Month. But if the frame that you're inside of is one of slavery, and post-slavery you can become a sharecropper, an indentured servant, how does sharecropping and indentured servantry even get you on the path to wealth creation?
Well, that was a wealth trap, and so if you could avoid it, you did.
Right.
And the book argues that African Americans didn't lose or squander wealth on the ongoing road from enslavement to equality. Instead, each time the American economy changed, agents of that change have dispossessed, disinherited, or decapitalized African Americans. So when you talk about sharecropping, this took the residue of enslavement, which was this violent labor predation, and turned it into a contract that turned sharecroppers into perpetual debt servants.
Mm-hmm.
And so this was a trap. Now, there are many whites who are trapped in sharecropping too, but mostly it was designed to ensnare and entrap African Americans, and it worked very well for generations. The book actually talks about a family, the Rivers family in Berkeley County, South Carolina, who avoided that. They became landowners, and this is like the we call it the success story of the early 20th century. That by 1920, African American farmers owned about 15 million acres of land, and it was hard won. It was hard won land, and sometimes the history stops with that and says, "Okay, that was a success." But by the year 2000, the system of decapitalization stripped 14 out of 15 million acres of that land. Right? So when we see these processes in history, Frederick Douglass called it the plunder, but it has these different iterations.
We just had John Boyd Jr. on this program last week, as I recall, who is the head of the Black Farmers Association in this country. And you were talking about how all that farmland was stripped away. My mind went immediately back to that conversation literally just a week ago, where they are now suing the federal government for broken promises. And here we are in conversation now with Calvin Schermerhorn that takes us back to that very conversation about how we got in this mess in the first place with all this land being stolen away from these African-American farmers. And here we are in 2025 again with these black farmers suing the federal government for promises made that were in fact unkept. When you, I'm curious, having gone through the book myself, how you discovered or chose these families through which to tell the story. You've referenced a few. Tell me more about that part of the story.
I chose the several families in this story because they weren't simply victims or subjects of economic violence or physical violence. They were striving. They were people who wanted a better future for their children, and they were people who overcame the obstacles in front of them, only to see new obstacles and new parts of this structure of racist discrimination pop up, like a many-headed hydra. You cut off one head, two more sprout in its place. And so each of the families were able to overcome this racism, only to see something else, a new iteration of it sprout up.
Yeah. You talk in the book about the violent setback of the Tulsa Massacre. Indeed, on this program again last week, we talked to the first black mayor of Tulsa in its 127-year history, as I recall. And recently on this program, we had Mother Viola Ford Fletcher, one of the two remaining Americans who lived through the Tulsa Massacre. Both of them now 110 years of age. But only two survive. So you reference and of course go into the Tulsa Massacre in the text, the new book, The Plunder of Black America. But I wonder, beyond that story that most of us have heard about, know something about, what you say about the resistance to the creation of black wealth in this country.
Yeah, this is the theme of the book. Every dollar has a history, and the theft of wealth has a history too. And so I look at the Ragsdale family, and so picture Tulsa in that June morning in 1921. Hartwell Ragsdale Sr. is owner of the Home Mortuary Company on Greenwood Avenue. He's rushing around trying to secure valuables because he hears the pops of gunfire outside, sees the pillar of smoke. He knows that the mob is coming for him. He dodges a bullet by hiding under a freight train. He eventually climbs aboard just as it's leaving the station. He escapes with his life and little else, and the Home Mortuary Company is destroyed. And so as your listeners know, right, $100 million of black wealth up in smoke, and no one's prosecuted for it. Ragsdale picks himself up. He moves to Ardmore, Oklahoma, and his children, though, learn a lesson from the family. And one of those children is Lincoln Ragsdale. He becomes a fighter pilot during World War II and is posted to Luke Airfield out here in Phoenix, Arizona. And then he decides to stay in Phoenix. And Phoenix is in the startup phase of its development. And he sees an opportunity to start a mortuary that serves Black and Latino customers. But then he runs into all kinds of a resistance to that. Even though he has saved up money, he's bought a lot, he's got a business plan, his brothers have mortuary licenses and are willing to help, no bank in Phoenix will give him a loan. He eventually gets a private loan from an investor who trades the opportunity to design the mortuary for the loan itself. Ragsdale goes into the home construction business and the insurance business, but at each turn, the new iteration of the plunder kind of rears its ugly head. And so we think of the civic development as, something that if you put it in the, sorry, if you, sorry, there's a tad bit of echo in my ear, but in the chapter, his family is very successful, but it comes at a high price. Mm-hmm. When they try to move across the racial boundaries into a white suburb, they encounter all kinds of harassment. They can't even buy their home. They have to use a white realtor who buys the home and hands it over to them on a handshake to avoid the racial restrictive covenant. He's pulled over by the police in a street, and the police are asking, "What are you doing here? This is a white neighborhood." Someone sprays the N-word in big letters on the front of his home at 1606 West Thomas Road in Phoenix, across from the Encanto Park. And Ragsdale, he leaves that graffiti up because he wants to make a statement that he is not going anywhere. But through these trials, we get to see this process. And shortly before his death, Dr. Martin Luther King observed that, no other ethnic group has been a slave on American soil, and no ethnic group has lifted itself by its own bootstraps. Mm. And what he means by that is, if you think about homesteading, which was a free land giveaway to white Americans, mm-hmm. or the Farm Extension Service, right? When we're talking about the racial disparities in farm aid, that's going to white farmers. The government-backed mortgages that are going to white homeowners, the GI Bill that's administered in such a way as to steer white applicants to college degrees and steer Black applicants to vocational training. And in generation after generation, we see iterations of this. Mm-hmm. And today we can look at the digital inequities, the health inequities, and kind of a constellation of other things where the government is not neutral in all this. And just to finish the statement, it's all right, Dr. King said, to tell a man to lift himself by his own bootstraps, but it is a cruel jest to say to a bootless man that he ought to lift himself by his own bootstraps.
Yep. You're going down a path I wanted to pursue. So while you're there, I'm just going to follow you. Say a bit more, if you will, about the intersection. You ran a beautiful list of things a moment ago, but say a bit more about the intersection of public policy and the racial wealth gap ongoing in this country.
Yeah, well, just to return to the example of Lincoln and Eleanor Ragsdale, who went into the home building business in South Phoenix in the 1940s and 50s, they had to pay double the interest rate versus a Veteran Administration or a Federal Housing Administration loan. So the startup cost of that wealth was bigger. The houses tended to be smaller. When the city decided to do urban renewal in South Phoenix, they zoned a lot of industrial areas right in those neighborhoods, which meant that even those African-American homeowners and Latino homeowners who'd managed to, get that investment, that nest egg in place, that nest egg rotted because if you're next to a metal fabricating plant and it's got the noise and pollution, that's going to diminish the property value. Mm-hmm. And then when Phoenix decided to route interstate highways through the city, no surprise, they tore through African-American and Latino neighborhoods. But when they wanted to route it through a white neighborhood, they built a massively expensive tunnel underneath to preserve the neighborhood and its businesses. And so you can see in instance after instance that the government policies have worked to decapitalize African-Americans.
I made the point earlier, and you know this better than anybody, that for Americans across the board, home ownership is the path that most of us get on to creating wealth. You mentioned these restrictive covenants earlier. I have often wondered how much more black wealth would have been created over the years had those restrictive covenants not been in place. Draw a line specifically, if you will, between those restrictive covenants and the racial wealth gap in this country.
Yes, it's hard to put a figure on it, but if you think about the nest eggs, the investments of suburban homeowners, and how the architects of that system built walls around white wealth to exclude African Americans, it's not just the value of those homes, which tended to increase, it's also the opportunities they planted in the suburbs. And so suburbs have these on-ramps to opportunities. I like to call them escalators. With good schools, with amenities, with public safety, with job opportunities that are close at hand as businesses have moved into the suburbs, that white-collar work has moved into the suburbs. And then outside that wall, it's not just that the property values in a place like South Phoenix have plummeted, but the health environment, the food environment, the job environment, all those on-ramps to wealth have a high toll attached to them because you have to almost physically escape those enclaves in order to access them. So it's, the more that we investigate this, the more that we can see this decapitalization coming into focus.
When we come forward with Calvin Schermerhorn discussing his new book, The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made, I want to ask him directly about black income and wealth and how this pushback has been critical to sustaining a structure of racialized disadvantage. You can't disconnect the racial wealth gap from, again, this racialized disadvantage that we see play out in so many spaces and ways in this country. We'll link those two things up and a great deal more when we come forward. The book, again, is called The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. Its author is our guest, Calvin Schermerhorn, right now on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 things you should know with BIN News. More alleged victims of sexual abuse at Cook County and Illinois youth detention centers are coming forward. A recent lawsuit on behalf of 133 former detainees brings the total plaintiffs to 800. The abuse reportedly occurred between 1996 and 2023. Inflation is rising more than anticipated. January's Consumer Price Index, which measures the cost in goods and services, increased by 0.5% for the month. It also pushed the yearly inflation rate to 3%. The National Weather Service warns that over 100 million people from the Rockies to New England will face intense winter weather, including bitter cold, snowfall, and icy conditions. The South won't see snow, but could experience floods and tornadoes. And about 1 million people are expected at the Philadelphia Eagles victory parade on Friday. The Eagles defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22 after leading 34-0. I'm Bree Wood on the Black Information Network, your home for Black News First.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Lakers and Clippers are back in action tonight. The Lakers are in Utah with a 6-game winning streak. The Clippers are at home against Memphis at the Intuit Dome in Inglewood. The Lakers and Clippers made roster moves that could have a significant impact on their season. The Lakers signed center Alex Len, a 12-year veteran, to back up Jackson Hayes. Len has been with 5 teams. Replacing the production of Anthony Davis is going to be a challenge for the Lakers. The Clippers signed 6'9" point guard Ben Simmons. Simmons was the overall #1 pick in the 2016 NBA draft, but he's been a major disappointment the past 3 years. The Clippers are gambling that Simmons will turn his career around here in LA. The Dodgers open their spring training camp today in Phoenix. The Dodgers are trying to become the first team to win back-to-back World Series championships since the Yankees did it in 2000. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, our grief is unique. But you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
If you're living with dry age-related macular degeneration or dry AMD, you may be at risk for developing geographic atrophy or GA. GA can be unpredictable and progress rapidly, leading to irreversible vision loss. Now there's something you can do to
slow it down and get it going slower.
Izervay is proven to slow GA progression.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Izervay or avacincaptad pagel is a prescription eye injection used to treat GA. Don't take it if you have an infection or active swelling in or around your eye. Izervay can cause eye infection, retinal detachment, or increased risk of wet AMD. Izervay may temporarily increase eye pressure. Your vision may be impaired after an eye injection or exam. Don't delay. Ask your doctor about Izervay today.
Izervay gets GA going slower.
Visit Izervay.com. That's IZERVAY.com.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the Voice of Reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the Voice of Reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
I have a dream today.
The road to freedom wasn't paved with just big moments. It was built day to day, step by step, voice by voice. This February, experience Black History Month through the stories that shape Los Angeles and beyond. KBLA Talk 1580, where Black history lives.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Calvin Schermerhorn, noted historian who's the author of the new book, The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. I said a moment ago, Calvin Schermerhorn, that these stories that you lay out in this book really reveal the ever-evolving strategies to strip black income and wealth, and how critical they have been to sustaining this structure of racialized disadvantage. Can you link those two things for me, please, sir?
Yes. If we go back in history and look at the context in which most Americans made wealth or piled up wealth, we can see that those were the times in which government policies and economic practices and real estate practices really excluded African Americans from doing so. So if we think of the time between 1930 and about 1970, this was what economists call the Great Leveling. Mm-hmm. The middle class was made. This was when incomes were more widely shared and higher than any time in history. The civil rights reforms, the civil rights revolution, really came on the tail end of that process. And so, yes, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act came right at the tail end of that. And as it dismantled that process, it gave, those reforms helped African American, homeowners and job seekers. But really, what we see at the last 50 years is an increase in inequality, in which competition has gotten much greater. And then by the 1980s, we see the Reagan Revolution actually throw those gains into reverse. And so if you look at the convergence of the racial wealth gap, it narrowed by about 1% a year from 1930 to 1960, started narrowing by a point and a half a year from 1960 to 1980, and then it went into reverse. In the 1980s, African American wealth hardly budged. White wealth rose by at least a third. And now we can see why that happened, because of a confluence of policies of the Reagan administration denying the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, enforcing the rules. It boosted white wealth at the expense of the debt. It also helped to restructure the economy in ways that rewarded already wealthy people and tended to make it harder to climb. And so over the last 40 years or so, we can see this process that we don't have this confluence of this tendency towards equality. We have a tendency towards inequality.
Yeah. What do you make of? Let me just pause for a second and just actually pause or pivot. Pick your word, maybe both. But what do you make of the wealth that black folk have, in fact, been able to create against all of these odds?
Yeah, so it's harder won and it's easier lost. And by that, I mean that the economy has surcharges, and they're hidden surcharges for black borrowers. Black credit card borrowers, African American car buyers pay about 1.5% more, across the board. And African American home buyers, famously, regardless of income, get steered into riskier, higher interest rate loans.
We call that the black tax, by the way.
The black tax,
Yeah.
That is correct. And so that hasn't changed. Now, what's changed is how it works. And so in the 1950s and 60s, yes, you can picture someone walking into a bank or a lending agency and, the racism starting. Now it's done through algorithms. But those algorithms, if they're trained on racist data, reproduce the old structural obstacles. And so those are the hidden surcharges. And so if you combine hidden surcharges with things like the increased cost of borrowing for higher education, that's what I'm talking about with the toll booths on the on-ramps to opportunity, charging African Americans a whole lot more. And we can see how the policies of rising cost of education, less support for those applicants and those students, these things all fit together to reproduce the old system and in the digital age. And so when we talk about things like diversity, equity, inclusion, this should be in the context of how these processes that keep reinventing black decapitalization take place.
Tell me more about these modern day algorithms you referenced a moment ago.
So, if you want to rent a home, if you want to apply for a job, you're going to have to be subject to a credit check. And the credit reports and the credit reporting rely on a lot of data and a lot of algorithmic processes. And baked into those processes are a lot of things that bring a past of discrimination into the present. So for your credit report, there's only a small slice of what what you can do to improve your credit, right? You pay your bills on time, you don't apply for too many credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of what's baked into your credit score and your credit reports is intergenerational wealth coming forward. So if you are a child whose parent put you on a credit card, for example, as a co-signatory, and that credit was paid, you start life ahead. You start your credit life ahead, right? If your parents paid for your college and you get out, debt free, then you get a boost in your credit score. So the history of wealth and the history of intergenerational transfer of wealth gives credit applicants at the start of their career a vast head start. So addressing that inequity means looking at that system and how structural inequities are baked into it, and try and resolve that, right? To try and make that more fair, because so much hinges on that, right? Everywhere we look, we see, oh, you're instantly approved for this, instantly approved for that. But what's standing behind that? What are the costs of borrowing? What are those financial obstacles?
You talked a moment ago about the setback, for black wealth in the Reagan era. I wonder if you might say a word, again, I recall this coming up in the reading of your book, the impact that the subprime lending crisis had on black wealth creation.
Yeah, this is hard to overstate, because here again we see the financial industry doing things that the financial industry and the real estate industry have done for generations, which is to discriminate against black borrowers. And so during the boom times of the early 2000s, African-American borrowers were steered into subprime loans regardless of income, regardless of if they qualified for prime loans. So this raises the borrowing cost. The fact that traditionally black families don't tend to have the wealth for the down payment that white families have meant that they were exposed to more risk. And so when the housing market crashed in 2008, it took nearly half of black wealth with it. 48% versus about a quarter of white wealth. But the white families tended, and this is in the aggregate, right? This is not a particular case. White America tended to bounce back because it had more of a wealth cushion. And African-American home ownership, even today, lags what it was in 1960 compared to white household home ownership. And so we can see again and again, like the exposure to risk really affects black borrowers a lot more than it does white borrowers. And this is a policy decision. It wasn't just Reagan. It was also Clinton. It was, this was part of this deal we've made since the 1970s that will deregulate industry, wait for the market to work its magic, and a rising tide lifts all boats. But what happens when there's holes in those craft, and those holes are racially calibrated?
When we come forward with Calvin Schermerhorn, the question I raised at the very top of this conversation almost 45 minutes ago was why it is that some 3.5 million black American families have zero or negative wealth. We'll get to that part of the conversation as we've been discussing the history of the racial wealth gap in this country. But that question nags at me. Zero or negative wealth. His book is called The Plunder of Black America. More with the author of the book, Calvin Schermerhorn, when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
California to the Carolinas. Everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
Texting privacy policy and terms and conditions posted at textplan.us. Texting enrolls for recurring automated text marketing messages. Message and data rates may apply. Reply stopped, opt out. Individual results may vary. Consult a doctor prior to use.
You've lost so much weight. How'd you do it?
I got medical treatment for weight loss through Zelty and lost 50 pounds. I struggled for the longest time, but Zelty makes it easy and affordable to get weight loss treatment 100% online. Zelty providers can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications clinically shown to help people lose weight, like Wegovy, Zepbound, and others.
I've heard those medications can help you lose weight, but aren't they expensive?
Zelty can help get the medication covered by insurance, so it's as little as $0 a month.
What if you don't have insurance?
No problem. Zelty may be able to help you get other GLP-1 medications for 80 to 90% off the price of name brand medications.
I'm ready to start losing weight. How do I get started with Zelty?
Just text.
Text SUNNY to 200-300 to get started today with Zelty and see if weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound are right for you. Don't wait. Text now for a link to your exclusive offer. Text SUNNY to 200-300. That's SUNNY to 200-300. SUNNY to 200-300.
They can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary.
On Saturday, February 22nd, you are invited to A Night with the Panthers, a special fundraiser dedicated to supporting Black Panther veterans who now require assistance with essential needs such as medicine, food, and housing. These Black Panther veterans championed human rights, fed the hungry, educated the community, and stood as powerful symbols of resistance and resilience. Despite their incredible sacrifices, loving and serving the people did not come with retirement plans or financial security. So, now it's our time to honor their legacy and ensure that they are cared for with the dignity they deserve. You can help by attending and supporting A Night with the Panthers, Saturday, February 22nd, 6:30 p.m. to 10 p.m. at the Project 43 Team Post Center, 6841 Crenshaw Boulevard, Los Angeles. For more information, contact Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. That's Black Panther Party Breakfast at gmail.com or call 707-554-2784. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They want to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and the noted historian Calvin Schermerhorn, whose new book is called The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. We've learned a great deal in this hour about the history of the racial wealth gap, unabated in this country. But I am fascinated, Calvin Schermerhorn, to ask how it is that so many millions of black folk have zero or negative wealth. It's one thing for the gap to exist, but zero wealth, negative wealth?
Yeah, let's go back in history and look at the ways in which families and households build wealth. And if we start with something like the homesteading of the 19th and early 20th century when the government gave away free land, or the farm aid or federal programs, and then say, all right, let's take that out. So let's go back and look at families who never got the 40 acres. Let's go back and look at the families that did not get the federally subsidized loans, that were not able to move into the suburbs, who were denied the business loans, denied the opportunities to earn a higher wage, denied the education, shut out of opportunities for climbing, right, getting on that wealth escalator. And then the health inequities that shorten lives, the residential discrimination that puts people at a distance from good jobs or decent schools. And if we put all those together, then we can start to understand how that structure fits together and why that is. The California Task Force on Reparations, as your listeners may know, calculated that the cost of residential discrimination over the life of a typical Californian amounted to about $160,000. Mm-hmm. So what if we added that $160,000 to the accounts of those people affected by that? That starts to sketch a picture of why so many African Americans are in this predicament of zero or negative wealth, meaning they owe more than they have in assets. And I don't want to stress, any sort of victimhood like this, mm-hmm. but this is the structural reality. It's hiding on the landscape, right? And it's as quiet as a computer algorithm that spits out a higher interest rate for a black applicant or denies a job based on a credit report.
Mm. Let's talk solutions when we come forward in our remaining moments with Calvin Schermerhorn. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
This is an ad by BetterHelp Online Therapy. When it comes to relationships, we often hear about the red flags we should avoid, but it's just as important to focus on the green flags. Think about how you want a relationship to feel, one where your boundaries are respected and you're encouraged to be your best self. If you're not sure what that looks like, therapy can help you identify those qualities so you can embody the green flag energy yourself and find it in others. Because whether you're dating, married, or building a friendship, it's time to form relationships that love you back. BetterHelp connects you to a diverse network of over 30,000 therapists worldwide with expertise in a wide range of issues, from depression and anxiety to work and relationships. It's 100% online and sign-up only takes a few minutes. Find your green flag energy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABC Radio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABC Radio.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Worried about eviction? You have rights, and Stay Housed LA can help. Stay Housed LA is a partnership between LA County, the City of Los Angeles, and local service providers. From Lancaster to Long Beach, we're here to help you with tenant education workshops, legal clinics, free legal services for eligible tenants, and online resources about tenant protection laws. Don't face eviction alone. Call our hotline at 1-888-694-0040. That's 1-888-694-0040. Or visit stayhousedla.org. Stay Housed LA, keeping Los Angeles residents in their homes. Stay Housed LA, your rights, your home, our community. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
I started vaping my freshman year of high school, mostly because all my friends had vapes. I wanted to fit in with them and look cool and be a part of everything that they were doing. The hardest part about quitting for me was all my friends still hitting their vapes right next to me. It was really frustrating and confusing when I was trying to quit because in my head I knew I didn't want to do it anymore, but for some reason my brain still wanted it.
No quit story is the same. For free support, text Kick Nicotine to 66819 today.
Made fresh daily in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
I've got about 5 minutes left here, and I want to give it to Calvin Schermerhorn to offer us some solutions. There are a number of innovative solutions that he has detailed in his book, The Plunder of Black America, how the racial wealth gap was made. There are many people, Calvin Schermerhorn, who believe that the racial wealth gap, the theft of black wealth, as you put it, is an intractable issue. Reading your book, it's clear to me that you don't believe it's an intractable issue.
No, because it's a process that was made by the handshake between government and industry, and real estate practices, and a whole host of other intentional human activity. So it can be unmade by those activities as well. So if we think about like Jim Crow education, again, with this idea that wealth is intergenerational, opportunities are intergenerational, what happened a couple, 3, 4 generations in the past still affects us. What if we went back and looked at how those disparities in education, states like South Carolina spent $3 for every white child or pupil in school, and they spent $1 for every black child. That is a huge disparity, and it's measurable in its effect on wages and wealth. What if we went back and did the math, did the accounting, and say, all right, let's have reparations for that, and give those children, those descendants, scholarships to a public university. More broadly, let's lower the bar, lower the cost of higher education, and treat access more as a public health and an investment in our future, not just public health, but generally social improvement investment than to see it as a private good. We could go back and look at the Freedmen's Savings and Trust Corporation, or the so-called Freedmen's Bank. A recent estimate said that the current value, this was a bank that failed in 1874, taking a lot of Black Americans' liquid assets with it. If we paid reparations from the Freedmen's Bank, that would be $118 to $139 billion. And what's backing this is to say, if the historical harm is financial, the remedy has to be financial. You mentioned the farmers involved in the Pigford v. Glickman case and the cases and the ongoing struggle to recover the lost farmland. Let's pay those claims. And on the other side, going forward, we need to look at things like digital equity to remove the racist algorithms that regenerate the racist credit scores and the obstacles to borrowing. It's probably heresy to say this in many quarters of the U.S. today, but DEI works. And instead of running away for it or demonizing it, we should look at how efforts from affirmative action to diversity, equity, inclusion have, instead of this conversation around like putting forward people who are not qualified, we should see that they have kept the door from slamming in the faces of qualified applicants. And even if we look at corporate DEI programs, like Delta Airlines, for example, decided to promote people from within who showed capability and loyalty to the company, even if they didn't have the college degree that might be the criterion for an entry-level job, right? That actually works, and it actually rewards, competence and doesn't punish people whose parents were not afford to contribute to their college education. Yeah. Lowering the costs of health care and access to health care, and don't punish African-American women with restrictions on maternal health care. This is kind of basic stuff.
Yeah.
Climate justice is another issue. In Los Angeles, right, the Eaton fires have affected the African-American residents of Altadena adversely, right, and disproportionately. And so we have to address each of these things in their context.
You make it clear that your list of innovative solutions, and indeed they are, is basic stuff. None of this stuff is pie in the sky, and yet so long as there is resistance to corrective programs like affirmative action, so long as there is resistance to the notion of reparations, so long as all of this resistance is codified in public policy, we've got work to do. The book is called The Plunder of Black America, How the Racial Wealth Gap Was Made. Its author is the noted and brilliant historian Calvin Schermerhorn, who I've been honored to have had on this program. Calvin, thank you for your time. Thank you for the book, and appreciate the conversation, sir.
Thank you, Tavis. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure's all mine. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. More alleged victims of sexual abuse at Cook County and Illinois youth detention centers are coming forward. A recent lawsuit on behalf of 133 former detainees brings the total plaintiffs to 800. The abuse reportedly occurred between 1996 and 2023. Inflation is rising more than anticipated. January's and about 1 million people are expected at the Philadelphia Eagles victory parade on Friday. The Eagles